Hello and good evening, everybody. Welcome to the All Portable Discussion Zone. It's a bi-weekly live stream all about amateur radio portable ops. My name is Charlie. Call sign is November Juliet 7 Victor. With me this evening are one of the two co-hosts for the show, Dan, KC7 MSU. Brian will be around, I guess, maybe next week or in 2 weeks when we do the next show. And I'm also pleased to introduce you to tonight's guest, Bruce, WY7N. Hey, Bruce. And also, warm welcome to all of those who are watching live in the chat. If you have a comment or a question, go ahead and throw that in the chat feed, and we'll do our best to respond. And don't forget that this show is converted to a podcast and is available about 24 hours after the show. So let's go ahead and get caught up on what's been going on with all of us, and then we'll dive right in and get to know Bruce a little better. So for me, I think nothing's changed very much. I've not really done a whole lot of amateur radio of date. I did go and attend the W7A Summits on the Air Arizona annual meetup. It was kind of a sparse gathering. We had over 30 committed, but only about 20 showed up. Maybe it was because of the rain or something. I'm not sure, but we had a great time. There were some guests from parts unknown or other parts of the United States. We had Andy, N7LAG from Asheville, North Carolina, was there with his wife. And we had Pat, what is it, Is it N7 or is it K7 GUD? I know is the end of it's GUD. Anyway, Pat from Idaho, and I think there was one or two others. Of course, Brad, a good friend of ours. He's always coming in town, and so anyway, it was a good meetup. So we had some pizza, we had some soda, and we had some good chatting and had a good time. So that kind of rounds out the Summits on the Air activities for Arizona for the year. The only thing left really is going to be the winter bonus. Once we get some snow, we'll go do some hiking in the winter, and we'll get some extra 3 points. But that's about it. So really haven't done much since our last transmission. Other than that, I really got to get on things. But I've just been on. I've been injured. Haven't been able to go out and hike and get out much. And then I have some stuff here at the desk that I'm unmotivated to get going with. So I need to motivate myself to put out a few videos. So we'll do that. Anyway, all right, Dan. What's been up with you?
Well, let's see here. I have been able to throw an end-fed up at the cabin, so I was pretty happy with the results of that. Haven't really got to operate much. Been doing a lot of work up north because there's some snow in Arizona, so that was pretty interesting weekend that we have had. So a little bit of snow in the high country, so that's a nice change, and it's actually cooled down here in the valley, so that's good. I missed the SOTA get-together yesterday. We have been busy preparing and welcoming a new grandson into the family, so kind of missed out on that. But hopefully we'll get together with that one again next year. So otherwise, I'm hoping to get out over the next couple of weeks, trying to put together a new 10-meter dive pole to play with, and get out on a summit or two.
Very good. Sounds great. Yeah, I need to get out as well once I get healed up a little bit. All right. Well, our guest today again is Bruce, WY7N. Bruce, what have you been up to the last couple of weeks or so?
Well, I've been resting because I kind of overdid it for my goat summit, which is, I think, what prompted you to get me on the show. So I haven't done anything since my goat weekend. I did 2 summits that weekend.
You're taking a rest, right? You're
yeah.
A well-deserved rest.
I'll get back at it. I almost went out yesterday, but there was too much to do.
Yeah, cool. All right, well, let's go ahead and get into the show then, and let's get talking about things and see what's going on. Before we get too far in, let me get the chat up here, the comments up here, because I do notice that our good friend Richie's Radio Room has donated $4. Thank you so much. Much appreciated. He's always in there giving us a little bit to move the show along. So thank you very much. Yeah, WY7N, Bruce. I actually did, invite you on the show because you had most recently got your mountain goat, and getting your mountain goat in the W7U, the Utah Association, is quite the challenge, isn't it?
There are a few steep ones. There certainly are. Although there are also some easy ones as well. I've been kind of doing easy ones, I think, the last year, but there are some hard ones that I've done.
Yeah. So, and I this isn't the first time that I've met Bruce. I think we've had at least 2 meetups in Cottonwood Heights. I go up there to see family, and then Bruce and a few of the other Utah contingent get together at Cottonwood Heights Cafe, and we have a good time chatting it up. So that was pretty cool. Cool. All right. Well, so let's get started with asking a little bit, Bruce, about your background. Tell us a little bit about maybe some of your education, your career, some of your other interests leading up to before you started getting into ham radio a lot and the SOTA and stuff.
Okay. Actually, for me, ham radio kind of made my career in a way. I think it started off, if I go through it really quick, when I was a little kid, I was sick a lot. And so that meant I was in bed a lot. Ends up I'm very allergic to cats, and I actually had a cat that was sleeping with me when I was a baby, so I'd go in and out of the hospital. But also my mom, they didn't have a lot of money, and they bought a subscription to the encyclopedia. I think it was Americana. I don't think it was Britannica, but one of those encyclopedias. So when I would be sick in bed, which was often, I would be thumbing through encyclopedias, and I always was drawn to science and things like that. A lot of pictures before I was reading well. But that was kind of the beginning. And then when I was in, I think it might have been as early as kindergarten, no later than first grade. You know how they have the scholastic book fairs that come to your elementary schools. I was permitted by my mother to buy one book, and I looked through all the books, and I think I might have that book here. Hang on just a second. Crash, it was buried. This is the book that I chose.
Magnets.
And it came with a magnet. It's magnets and how to use them. And I really enjoyed this book when kindergarten, first grade, just mostly playing with the magnets. And then not far, a couple blocks from my house, there was I think he was Navy guy that lived. Incidentally, I grew up in Colorado, west side of Colorado, not far from Telluride. And there was a TV repair shop just a couple blocks from my house. And I wanted more magnets. So here's this little teeny scrawny kid. I'd go into this TV repair shop, and the person at the desk actually let me go back to the guy that was repairing TVs. His name was Carl Pearson, and he had Navy tattoos all over him, which back then was novel. And he would be repairing TVs, and I would eventually say, well, do you have any magnets? Because I knew they had them in there somewhere. He would save magnets for me. And I remember he'd have these TVs all torn apart. And there were, I would come up, little teeny kid, point to something. What's that? And he would say, that's a capacitor. Do you have any magnets? But I didn't really understand what he was doing, what all of the electronics were. Next on this path to my career, my grandpa, who lived next door to us, he gave me, these were brand new at the time, but it was a little Panasonic transistor AM radio. It might have had FM. I don't remember. I think it was just AM only. Took a 9-volt transistor battery with a earphone. And I remember at night, I would turn on that radio with the earphone on to not disturb anybody else. And at nighttime, the AM bands open up. I remember listening to particularly KOMA from Oklahoma, and they played rock and roll music, which
Nice.
I don't think my parents would have approved. But anyway, I listened to that. I was amazed that you could hear Oklahoma from Colorado. During the daytime you couldn't, but at night you could. So that was kind of the beginning. But I'll speed this up a little bit so I don't take too much
Okay.
time about my career. In high school, it was somewhere around there that I had a neighbor who actually, I was in Boy Scouts. Let's go with that part. I was in Boy Scouts of America, and I was working, on merit badges. I'd pick the ones that interested me and the ones that looked easy. And of course, there was electricity and electronics, and the merit badge counselor for electronics was a ham radio operator. And anyway, one of the requirements was to build something using electronics. You had to solder. Some of you may know may have done it yourself. But we bought some Heath kits, and I built a Heath kit. And when I was building that Heath kit, time stopped. I think it took me hours. It was a really simple one, but it took me hours, and it seemed like seconds. I had just found my element. I just loved it. And I also, similar time frame, I don't know if any of you have had those electronics, 101 build it kits. They used to sell them from Radio Shack.
Oh yeah.
They had these little spring terminals. I think some of you my headphone is really quiet, but I heard some of you may have seen those.
Yep.
I loved that kit. I was over at his house playing games or something, and he had that. And I said, can I borrow this? I took it home, and I did all 101 of it stayed up all night doing all of those experiments. Wow. I didn't understand how most of them worked. And if you didn't work, I probably did something wrong. But that was the first time I'd stayed up all night doing something just because it was fun. So I was into it. I wanted to get into ham radio. In high school, I found a neighbor lived a few blocks away. I don't know if anybody on the call might know him. He's been a silent key for a long time, but it's WB7UGR was his call sign. He actually didn't have a call sign. He and I both got our novice licenses at the same time. Actually, it's sad because we both went in to take the novice test at the same time, and I passed the test, but he didn't. I think he couldn't do the code. I passed the code and he didn't. So my call sign was WB7TSS, and it was sad. He had to try again later and became WB7UGR, but he and I got our licenses together. Another TV repairman. So anyway, it was a lot of fun. I wasn't a good student though. And so I did get my ham radio license, and I knew that for my career, I wanted to do something electronics. But I knew you needed to go to school for that. So I began studying, and I escaped from high school, but I did well in science, but history or English, not so good. Although to buy ham radio gear, I was doing really yucky jobs. I was a janitor, and as soon as I did that for a couple of years while I was going to high school, but then I said, I've had enough of that. I did, I was a dishwasher, I was a short order cook in a restaurant, and then I worked as a janitor. But I said, when I was 16, though, I said, I've had it. And my Elmer, Don, WB7UGR, I hitched a ride with him as he was going into work, and with a pocket full of quarters, and I rode the bus all around Salt Lake City. And I visited, got out the yellow pages, anything that looked like electronics. I went in and asked for a job. And eventually I went into this company. I didn't even know what they did. They were called Utah Scientific, which I later learned they actually hired me to be an assembler, electronics assembler, 16 years old, still in high school. And they made routing switchers for the broadcast TV industry. And one of the first things I worked on was there was a system, a big routing switch that was actually going to be used in the Olympics. And so I was involved in that. I think it was must have been the 1980 Olympics.
Wow.
Yes. When I did that. So that was a fantastic opportunity. I saw what the technicians were doing, and I moved up from being an assembler to be a technician. So these are the beginnings of my career. I then took a hiatus. I served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, went to South America. Interestingly, while I was down there, I found some ham radio operators. I was walking by a house in Lima, Peru. Actually, I was in Chiclayo, Peru, and I kept walking by this house while we were out working. And I said, that really looks like a shortwave antenna. I went and knocked on the door, and I said, is that an antenna? And they were really super surprised that I even knew what they were talking about. And so met some people.
That was an N.
It was really neat.
Yeah, cool.
So when I got back, though, I went to school at the local technical college, Salt Lake Community College, and studied electronics. And there, and I took my plan was to get enough education, because I was a terrible technician working at Utah Scientific. So much I didn't know. So I thought my plan was to take a couple semesters there or maybe get an associate's degree, get a job as an electronics technician, and then continue on and get an engineering degree. But I went there 2 semesters, did really well in the classes that I took. The instructor, he invited me to take this upper level computer course, and I thought I had missed the computer revolution. I said I'd missed the wave. When I went to Peru, I'd never touched a computer, but when I got back from Peru, had a room full of them at school. I went in and played, some Apple IIs. I thought I'd missed the wave. Although my science teacher, he said, Bruce, you haven't missed the wave. Don't let that stop you. But I wanted to do electronics. But he invited me to a computer interfacing course at Salt Lake Community College that he was teaching. I told him, I don't have all the prerequisites. He says, you'll do fine. Come on in. And I took that course. That course led me to, I noticed a job posting. I was thinking it was just going to be a summer job at Iomega Corporation. I don't know if anybody remembers Iomega zip drives and Bernoulli drives. It was them. And they hired me because I had taken that computer interfacing course. I worked in quality assurance. I was testing their new prototypes before they were released. Fantastic job. I eventually worked my way up to be an engineer, a non-degreed engineer at Iomega Corporation. And they paid for my schooling. I went to Weber State University. I was trying to be an electrical engineer. I took all the electrical engineering courses that they had. And I got to the point where I'd taken everything I could from Weber State University to get an electrical engineering degree, and I would need to change to the University of Utah or to Utah State University to finish out my EE degree. And I was only going about half time because I was working full time as a non-degreed engineer. But about that time that I had to make a choice, I don't know if any of you remember, back then the internet wasn't around, and the way there were trade magazines, and there was one that I read several of them. You'd get free subscriptions to these trade magazines if you worked in the industry. There was one called WY Times.
Oh yeah.
And once a year they would have a salary and opinion survey. And I was excited. They had a lot of hype for that, for months before they hyped it, the results were going to be coming out. And I was got to see this issue that came out, and I whipped it open and read. And that month, software engineers, their average salary had bumped up, and they made more money than hardware engineers, electrical engineers, which is the track I was going on. And I realized, I could, if I stayed at Weber State University and got a computer science degree, I could finish in 2 years, but it would take me at least 3 or 4 years to finish if I switched and got a double E degree. And I says, more money, less time in school.
Yeah.
I got a computer science degree. Today, I kind of rolled my own degree. I took all the digital courses and all the electronics that they had. My degree was finally a bachelor's of science in computer science, but I minored in electrical engineering technology. Today, you would call that degree a computer engineering degree. I did a lot of really cool things in school. One of my favorite courses, which epitomizes what I do, was we had to build a computer with discrete parts. Now, because I was working at Iomega Corporation, there were all kinds of manufacturers that would give me free samples of any chip I wanted. And I ordered some bit slice logic. I didn't do it the way that most of the class did it, with just AND gates, NOR gates, and the like, and the ALU. I actually did bit slice logic, and I made a clone, not a full one, but a clone of the Motorola 6800, because I had an assembler for that. And so I made a little tiny microprocessor using bit slice logic, and it implemented the Motorola 6800 instruction set. That was really fun. And then my senior year, I wanted to take an embedded systems course, but none of the instructors knew anything about embedded systems. They had a book, but I actually taught the course.
Oh no, are you serious?
For embedded systems, and that was, and developed their curriculum for that. And another course that was really good there was a device drivers course. And Weber State was great. You could go into the faculty. Sorry, say that again, Charlie.
Oh, I was just saying that was something there.
Oh, it was. And back then, this was about the same time that Linus Torvalds invented Linux. And he and I had the same inspiration. There was an operating system that a professor, I think in the Netherlands or Holland, I'm not sure which, his name was Tannenbaum. He had his students create a Unix clone called Minix that ran on IBM PCs. And for the device driver course, I took an Iomega Bernoulli box and wrote a device driver for Minix. And the device driver would boot Minix off of a Bernoulli box. That's how I passed the course and got my grade in that. So you could roll your own curriculum at Weber State University.
That's cool.
So, and that's the kind of work I've done my whole career. That launched my career. I feel like I've talked a lot. Do you want any questions or add anything at this point, Charlie or Dan?
No, that's a pretty good background. It kind of fills in all the gaps that I had questions about, as far as how you were. It's impressive. You were in the Boy Scouts, but most impressive is you just kind of took the bull by the horns and said, I want a job and I want an education, and you just did it. So that's amazing. What about you, Dan? Any questions?
Yeah, device drivers are definitely a nasty thing, but it's amazing because, you know, kind of the same era now where you used to be able to kind of make your own career, and you would find how things related to another thing, and you would, you know, kind of drop in one area and drop out and drop in somewhere else, you know, and you make an interesting career out of being able to do that and being resourceful, and it's not so easy to do that anymore, it seems like, but it's a lot of fun if you had the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, there was a huge vacuum at that time for people that knew anything about computers. The industry, the companies, if you would put on your resume that you knew anything about computers, they would hire you and see if you worked out. So, and people that did know something and could do something was good. Oh, look, you put a picture up.
Yeah, I was just you've told us about what led you to your career, but what's this have to do with anything?
All right. Well, that I need to fold back a little bit. So
Okay.
go clear back to when I was a kid. Back in 1969, I was 7 years old. And what happened in 1969? It was the Apollo 11 launch and the first men on the moon. I was a 7-year-old kid all summer long, glued to the TV to find out what would happen next. And you're right. Nothing that I've said so far in my career said anything about space. The picture you put up there is a Falcon 9 launch, and I was on the team that designed 4 of the satellites that are on that Falcon 9 that's going up. And if we should put the link to this video in the chat.
Oh yeah.
On the chat, or you know, when you put the video up.
Yeah, we'll do.
Yeah. So glued to the TV, I always thought that I would do something. Back then, I thought I would do something in space. This was before I got into electronics. I'd kind of abandoned the goal of being, you know, working at NASA. I kind of had one. If you would have asked me when I was 10, 11, 12, I would have said, oh, I want to work at NASA. And I never really thought I would. My most recent job is I work at L3 Harris, and they do communications, and it's mostly defense work. If you look closely at some of those pictures that I sent you, you'll see that the logo on the payload fairing of that rocket says Missile Defense Agency. Those are those are SDA tracking satellites that were on there. Yeah, if you look at that picture closely, you can see that it says Missile Defense Agency, you know, Department of Defense. There's a lot that, you know, this isn't I pulled this picture right off of Facebook, I think it was either NASA or might have been the SpaceX. I don't remember where I pulled it, but it's available. And there's a lot. This is their missile track, or the hypersonic missile tracking system that the SDA, Space Defense Agency, is putting up. But it was interesting. I wanted to switch jobs 3+ years ago, or I didn't want to switch jobs. It just for a coworker twisted my arm to go interview at a company. And one of the things I was really interested in was this company was going to put a satellite in space. And I thought, well, that would be really cool to do that. But before I did, I said, you know, if I'm going to switch jobs, looks like somebody interviewed there at Fort Wayne. Yeah, really neat stuff they do at L3 Harris. I thought, you know, if I'm going to switch jobs, I probably should talk to L3 Harris, because it's a really fairly easy commute from my house. And I bet I know a dozen people that have worked there for a long time, really good people. So I interviewed there too, just to give me some some negotiation room that I could negotiate maybe a better salary. I wanted this other job partly because they were working on satellites, but I ended up taking the L3 Harris job instead. I got an offer from both of those places. And little did I know, I didn't even know they did satellites. And not only that, I got assigned to this project. So
very cool.
it was kind of a dream come true that I wasn't driving my career in that direction. It kind of just happened. But as you can see, I'm willing to brag about it, that I now have some low Earth orbit satellites in space. The irony is I've got the equipment to do hamsats, and I have yet to do a satellite. So satellites. It's on my bucket list. I've got the equipment. I just haven't quite. Well, I actually have tried. I've tried 3 times unsuccessfully. To get through an FM bird. I decided, I need to go find someone that knows what they're doing. I tried to just, watch some videos, and it's harder than it looks so far. I actually found somebody really good that could help me, but I've just been too busy. So, thanks for putting that picture up and reminding me, Charlie. My career's been fantastic. If I go backwards real quick on my career, a little bit, I've worked before L3 Harris. I was at a company called Owlet Baby Care. They make these really smart socks that you can put on your baby's foot, and it measures your pulse oximetry. And the CEO really his goal was it was an unofficial goal, but he wanted to end SIDS. He wanted to stop SIDS. Any baby dies is too much. But that's a medical claim. They actually got in trouble. This is about the time that I left. The FDA said, "No, you guys are selling a medical device, they were selling it to the consumer space." But it's a fantastic product. They recently got FDA approval. But so that's where I was before that, before L3, before Owlet Baby Care. I was working for Disney.
What?
And I was working for Disney on computer games. They had a studio here in Salt Lake City, and I was working on Star Wars computer games about the time. I can't remember which Star Wars movie it was that came out at the time, but I was part of the new Disney, the first movie that Disney came out of the Star Wars franchise. That was awesome to work on computer games and Star Wars. Another dream come true.
I didn't even know Disney did that.
Computer games, you mean?
Yeah.
Or the Star Wars movies?
The games. I didn't even know in that.
Yeah, they did for a while. They've gotten out of it. That was, but they actually purchased a studio called Avalanche Software here in Salt Lake City, and there was a product that they made called Disney Infinity, which had these little figurines with RFID tags, and you could buy the figurines. You could buy like a Darth Vader, and then there was a reader that you would plug into your Xbox or your PlayStation. You drop this figurine on, that you bought on the reader, and then that character in your game would appear in your game. And I did the firmware in that RFID reader and interfaced that to all the the gaming systems. It's called Disney Infinity.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. Wow. That is pretty cool.
It was. I was really proud of that. A few other things. I've worked at a lot of places. I worked at a company that changed names several times. That was the first name when I went to work there was Broadcast Television Systems, same space as Utah Scientific when I first started out, but they made broadcast TV equipment, master control switches. And there was a time, in fact, I think probably almost all of your viewers have watched TV long enough. If you've ever watched Discovery Channel like a decade ago, I think in the last decade they've kind of moved away from it, but Discovery Channel, PBS, and several other stations, you likely have watched or listened to some programming that software I wrote processed in some way. And also, if General Conference for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, there was a system that they made to automate the translation. This was, and I helped the engineer that designed this. And their system made it so they could broadcast their General Conference without very much, far less engineering support in hundreds of languages. That system came online in 2002, just in time for the Winter Olympics. And so that system, they helped with the languages of the Olympics that year. So that's another Olympics connection that I had. My career's been amazing.
It sounds like it.
I pinch myself.
Yeah, it sounds absolutely amazing. We're already past halfway, so we better dive more into the SOTA stuff. So let's talk about where you found SOTA, Summits on the Air.
SOTA, that's a good question. So I'll make that a story too. I'll try to be quick so that if I can. But with ham radio, it wasn't long until I discovered contests. I was a novice operator. I remember as a novice, I did sweepstakes, one probably very early on, and really enjoyed doing sweepstakes as a novice. Field day, discovered field day. I loved field day, and so much so that I would do, over the years, when I was really busy, I would do field day when that would be the only ham radio activity I'd do all year. Some years I wouldn't have any ham radio activity, but if I did, there were many years that field day would be it. And I started doing contests field day style. And I had heard of Summits on the Air and kind of went, oh, that's kind of cool. I'd like to try that a little bit. In fact, before I go too much further, I should also say, let me go back to Boy Scouts. In 1975, there was a camporee that I was on, and we camped out up here near my house is a nice little canyon called South Willow Canyon, and it was called the Deseret Peak Camporee. And if you hiked, it's like a 8-9 mile hike round trip to hike to the top of Deseret Peak and back. As a scout, I was like, I think I was 13 years old. I didn't know if I could do it, but I wanted the patch. And I actually found that patch a few weeks ago. I said, wow, here's this patch, because I did manage to hike it. So anyway, the feeling of accomplishment of hiking Deseret Peak was hard to describe if you haven't done it. Summits on the Air operators probably get it. But anyway, back to ham radio. So I liked hiking, and I liked field day, and I liked contests. In fact, I was doing a contest. I was doing CQ WPX contests, and I was going all out. And I said, and I was doing it field day style. I says, if I could do SO2R, 2 stations going, maybe, and I'd go QRP. I've done QRP for a long time. Maybe I could win. But I only had one radio, and I knew somebody at Ellicraft, and I called her up and I said, can I borrow a radio? And of course I was thinking, the K4 was out. I was hoping they'd send me a K4 or something.
Right.
I don't know what I was thinking. But they said, sure. And they sent me a KX2. And I was like, KX2? KX2? What is this thing? And I was blown away by the KX2, but I instantly said, "Oh," and I looked online, and you could see Steve WG0AT, his
Yes.
photo there.
Yep.
I instantly said, "Oh, this is for SOTA. This is for Summits on the Air." And I said, I should try that. So it was about the time that COVID. Anyway, I think it was about Liz's year. There was, so when COVID hit, I wanted something to do, and I said, let's try this Summits on the Air thing. And I didn't have a KX2 at the time, but a long time ago, when I was into QRP, I built one of these. This is Steve Weber's. This is an early I think, what are these? AST3B is what this is. I bought one of his kits. I ponied up the money, and you had to send him a check.
Yeah.
And it's a surface mount kit, so it's pretty advanced.
Yeah, Steve Weber stuff is great.
Very well. Yeah. Wouldn't they have the mountain toppers today that you can buy?
Yeah.
They're pretty much the same radio. But I built one of these just because I thought it was fun. I thought and I had this radio. So I took this radio. I reached out to some of the hams that are doing Summits on the Air in the area. My Elmer was Mike AC0PR.
Oh yeah.
He was, I think, you know him?
Yep.
For sure. Yeah. He's
so
very, very good. He's one of the movers and shakers of the Utah Association, for sure.
Yeah, he hasn't been doing a lot of SOTA lately, but anyway, he kind of got me going, gave me some hints, and he did tell me, when to watch for someone calling S2S, but I'd forgotten about it. Anyway, I got out there, and I used these jackite, these 33-foot jackite poles, which I used for my field day and my field day style contests. I just took one of those to a summit, and anyway, I was blown away. I was like, whoa, this is fantastic. You post your spot, you call CQ, and a pileup. I've never had a pileup before. Come on. And like I said, and I worked lots of people. I don't remember. I'd have to look to see if is it, what is his name? Is it Christian? F4?
Oh, yes, Christian. Yes. Foxtrot 4 Whiskey Bravo
Christian?
November.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he worked me that time, but I was blown away when he worked me the first time. But I remember I was running my pile up, and so this is fantastic. And then someone called S2S. I'll tell you about that photo in a sec. But when someone called in S2S, I'd forgotten to watch for that, and I was like, S2. I was like, what? I was expecting a W or an N or an A. What's this S?
Right.
Someone from, what is that, Switzerland? But I eventually figured it out that, yes, Mike told me about that. So I worked in S2S. So yeah, that's the very radio.
Yeah, that's why I pulled it up. I'm like, hey, that's the radio right there.
And that's fun. Anyway, how am I doing? Now we're 3/4 of the time gone. So that's how I found SOTA. There hasn't been any turning back. So I remember what I told you, that I'm like the donkey in Shrek. I talk. It's getting me to shut up. That's the trick. Anyway. So you asked about SOTA. How's that? That's how I got started, and I've loved it ever since. So.
Oh, Charlie, you're on mute.
Audio quit.
There it is.
Am I on mute?
No, I am. I'm on mute. Sorry. So tell us about one or two of your SOTA experiences that were most memorable. There's this picture here. Obviously, Utah is beautiful, so you've been to some beautiful summits, and then there's this, which I don't know what that is. It's some big canyon, and we also have have some pictures of you skiing, and so in Utah that would be apropos, and operating in the snow. So those may be your most memorable, or they may not be. What do you think one or two of your most memorable experiences are?
Well, since we're limited in time, I'll pick one real quick that's really fresh in my mind. Last summer, not this one that just kind of went by, but last summer I was on eccentric benchmark up in the Uinta Mountains. It's a 10-pointer, fairly serious hike to get into, 3.5 miles to, I don't remember how much elevation, but I worked somebody. There was I love doing S2S, and I don't usually do sideband, but I worked a KG5 ISG. I think his name is Don.
Uh-huh.
And the point is he sent me a QSL card on that activation that blew me away. Let me see if I can find the right one. Got to find the date. Not that one, but it's, I think this was the one that he sent me. Let me put that into the camera so that maybe you can see it better.
Yeah.
The point is he hand draws these. As far as I can tell, this is hand drawn. And that's not the only one that I've received. On the 10-meter challenge, I worked him on 10 meters, and I thought maybe he only did it because it was an S2S, but he sent me one for when I worked him on 10 meters earlier this year. And then on my GOAT summit, I saw his spot on there again, and I had to work him again. In fact, on that QSO, I said, thanks for all the awesome QSOs. And he said, well, there's another one on the way. And he, good to his word, look at this. He sent me another one. This was my GOAT, the QSL for my GOAT summit.
That is so cool.
Hand drawn. I love this, that he does, he puts a little S2S because that's what it was. I'm actually doing a video because I have video of when I worked him on eccentric benchmark. Didn't think much of it. I just thought it was another S2S. I'm always happy to get another S2S.
Right.
But the QSL card was fantastic. And I have the audio, no video, from my GOAT summit. So I'm going to post a YouTube video of these fantastic QSLs that this guy sends.
Yeah, so for people who don't know, Bruce has a really good YouTube channel, so you can see some of his adventures. What's the name of it, Bruce? Tell everybody a little bit about it.
I think it's just WY7N. I'm not super serious about it. I think I have 3 videos up there right now, but I'm soon to have 4.
Yep.
But I plan to do. I hate editing video, to be honest. I don't like doing video either. I'm a rebel at video, but you have to today. I like audio a lot better than video. I almost went into audio production as a career, but didn't. It was actually a really good choice.
Yeah.
So, anyway, that was one. How are we doing time wise?
We're good. Let me ask you another question.
A couple more. Sure.
Yeah. Let's. We can go over too. By the way, if you have time, we can. We don't have to be right on the dot. So, tell me a little bit about what your philosophy is for Summits on the Air, and keep in mind what you would share with somebody who's brand new to SOTA. Summits on the Air. What would you tell them to maybe avoid some pitfalls that you may have had, and just to make it a good experience for them?
Well, for a newbie, I think I really lucked out. I had a good Elmer. Mike was fantastic. I did a lot of research. I'm telling you things I did well, not things that I messed up on.
You may not have had any pitfalls.
Well, I didn't have any big ones. Mine has been really successful. I've learned from a few mistakes, but for the most part, this is what I did, is I did a lot of research. I read up on it. I talked to people who've done it before. I tested my equipment in my front yard before I took it on a summit. These were all good things. I'd learned long ago to not get your wires tangled up. I learned how to do that. You know, there's ways to wind wires. A figure eight is your friend, because it's terrible if you get your wires tangled up.
Yes.
Those jackknife poles were way too heavy, but I've done 4 or 5 summits with those. I found these Tenkara fishing poles. In fact, I finally asked. I hadn't asked that to Mike or any of the other Elmers, but I finally asked them, "What do you guys use? These things are so heavy." You know, in Utah, most of the time you need something to hold your antenna up. Most of the summits are bald. In fact, I don't like summits with trees. Trees are a pain in the neck.
That's funny.
I don't know. I don't know. That's
good.
probably what comes off the top of my head.
What about your gear? What are you using right now, and has it evolved at all?
Oh, it has evolved. I wished I had the photo to show you, or I wished I'd shown it to you. I have a photo that I sent to Greg W7GA. I have a photo of my Christmas tree with a box from Elecraft underneath it, and I bought myself a KX2. Now, but that's not what I use. Just recently, well, not recently, quite a while ago, I bought an IC705.
Oh, nice.
But these things are heavy, you know.
Oh, they are. I didn't
there was on the forum. So I was really reluctant to take it with me. I would take it to drive ups, you know, but I hadn't really hiked with it yet. And on the forum of the reflector, the SOTA reflector, there, a few weeks ago, maybe a month or two ago, there was somebody talking, which is better, the KX2 or the IC705, you know. And I remember somebody commenting, he was talking, he liked IC705s, and one of the guys in the UK said, talking about the guy that was defending the IC705, he says, "Oh, he's known to put an anvil in his pack if it's not heavy enough." And I understood. I get that, but anyway, when I get to the summit, I've started using my IC705. I think it's my go-to right now.
Cool.
And I'm sorry for the people at Elecraft that, you know, did all these favors for me, that maybe I'm being unfaithful. But I not only do I love this to the summit. Now, why do I use this instead of my IC705? Instead of my KX2? It's the 10-meter challenge. It's super easy for me to do FT8 on this. I don't do FT8 very often, but if I want to get my 10-meter contact for the challenge, there are times when 10 meters is dead, no one's answering you, but if you get on FT8, you can usually
that's a good idea.
That's
awesome.
Yeah. And
what about antenna?
But also antennas. Oh, that's a good question about antennas. Over the years, I have always used doublets, and I use a balanced feed to the doublet. At first I used ladder line. If you get on my YouTube channel, you'll see one of my first videos. You can see the heavy black ladder line, and I think the ladder line works fantastic. But I found some old 300 ohm twin lead that still gives me the balanced feed. My understanding of the theory, but anecdotally, my own experience is, if you use a vertical, I've always been unimpressed with verticals anytime I've tried them. Now, maybe I haven't ever used a really good one, or I didn't have enough radials or something, but I've always been unimpressed with them. I've always been impressed. I used to use long wires for my field day activations, big ones like 1,000-foot long wire or something like that. But I learned to do an off-center feed on those, and I could tell the difference, that it worked better. And my thinking was, the end that you have on the ground is eating up half of your power, 3 dB of your power. So, and anecdotally, that seems to be my experience. So I use a doublet, usually resonant at either 80 meters or 60 meters. That's pretty long. There's a video of me activating Beaver Benchmark. You can see me putting up an 80-meter doublet, and you can see the twin lead coming down. I tune it up. The idea of the twin lead, the balance feed, is the feed line, in theory, disappears, and because they're out of phase with each other, so the fields cancel out, and it's like feeding right at the feed point of the doublet. That's what seems to work best for me. I experiment with the others. I haven't tried an end-fed half wave yet. So anyway, I see a question out here from Al Cricker, K7ULM. I think I've worked you before. Your call sign.
Yeah, he's up in Montana, I believe.
Yeah, thanks for all the. I think we've done some S2Ss. I'll have to look you up. But I also have a Elecraft T1 tuner, so I have the IC705 to the K1 tuner, and I balance it. And actually, I also have a Ballon, a big heavy Ballon. I usually my doublets would struggle on a band or two to match with my tuner. I could just tell, but when I started using a Ballon, then I can match all bands with that doublet. So anyway, someone asked me about mountain goat status. He might be asking. He doesn't know what a mountain goat is. I'm not sure what
That's what it is. He's like, what does that mean? What does it mean to achieve mountain goat? How do you do it? You know.
Okay, you want me to explain, or maybe one of you guys can explain it better? So, absolutely, you want me to explain it?
Yes.
Well, when I got into this, the mountain goat, I like to call it status. It's an achievement. It's kind of a goal. In fact, in Summits on the Air, you asked me what's my philosophy on Summits on the Air. And there's all kinds of little goals that you can work on. So the activators, the hams that go to a summit and activate the summit, you've got to bring a station up there. You've got to get into the activation zone of the summit, set up your station, talk to at least 4 stations. And if you do that, each summit that you activate gives you a certain number of points, and it's based on the altitude above sea level for that summit. They range in Utah from 1 point up to 10 points. 10 is as much as you can get. But when if you activate the summit, get 4 contacts, you get the points for that summit. When you reach 1,000 points, you have achieved the mountain goat status. For the people that chase you in the that are home in their shack, they will get points for contacting you. So you kind of have this synergistic relationship, and it kind of tickles I like to help people. So I kind of feel like, well, I'm achieving all these goals when I climb a summit. Number one, I just climbed the summit. That's an achievement in itself. I feel like I achieved a goal. I get points towards my mountain goat. And the people that I work, the people that are chasing me, they're getting points for the summit as well. And if they get 1,000 chaser points, they achieve shack sloth status. And incidentally, I'm going to digress and just say that I hit my shack sloth award just by S2Ss, which was I thought was really cool.
Oh, that's cool.
Whoa, what happened? Yeah. So got a lot more now. Hopefully that was a good enough answer. Do you guys want to add anything about mountain goat status?
No, I think that's good. I think that covered it. Dan, do you have any other questions or comments before we roll into, I guess, one more question for him?
Well, I'm kind of curious. So, I mean, I've done one out-of-state summit so far, but Utah summits are on my list because I used to live in Midvale in and stuff
Ah.
close to Sandy. So peaks that are fun to do in Utah that are, like if you're traveling and you can do a peak, what's probably, one or two of the best ones to do?
The easiest way to figure that out is you look for, I get on SOTLess. I call it SOTLess, as
Yep.
SOTL.AS.
Yep.
Fantastic website. I use that a lot. If I'm going someplace I've never been, I look for summits that have lots of activations. You kind of, when you come to Utah, you have to do view benchmark. I think that's W7U stroke. Is it UT043? I think it is.
I don't even remember. I've done it, but I don't remember.
Yeah, it's got
benchmark.
view benchmark. I think it's UT.
It's right there. That's the Thanksgiving.
Oh, there it is. UT43.
Yeah, and lots of people have activated that. You can drive to it's got paved roads all the way to the trailhead, and it's a nice, easy trail.
Well, that's
it's probably
yeah, it's got some great photos on SOTLess too. So okay, that looks like a fun hill.
Yeah, I imagine it depends though too, Bruce, based on what time of year it is. Obviously, if it's wintertime, the view benchmark's probably about all you're going to get, right?
Oh, in the wintertime, dead of winter. Well, I noticed. Have you done view benchmark, Charlie?
Yeah, I've done it.
Yeah, that one's a pretty easy one. Charlie has also done
Scott Hill,
Quarry Mountain in Park City a couple times. You got a video of Quarry Mountain activating that. I've activated both of those in the winter in the snow. So you'll probably want snowshoes if the snow is deep, but both of those, you could do both of those without snowshoes in the deep winter. Well, if the snow's really deep, you'll want snowshoes, but you don't usually have super deep snow at these altitudes of those two summits. So if it's a wintertime, those are both good choices. Both of them, you have paved, salted, snow-plowed roads all the way to the trailhead. So there's two.
Nice.
Another one up by north of, it's not Ogden, there's Powder Mountain Ski Resort. It's actually a drive up. The parking lot, it's a parking lot for Powder Mountain Ski Resort. That's another one you can do year round. You don't have to do any hiking on that one at all. It's a little ways away from Salt Lake City, though. It's probably an hour drive to get you there. Those are some recommendations. If you're serious about it, you're coming in here, I can find out what your itinerary is, and I can find some more. There actually aren't very many.
Yeah.
But there are a lot that you can get to. Sure.
Yep. Cool.
Yeah. Anything else, Dan?
Nope. That's my big question.
All right. Well, I'm going to put you on the spot then, Bruce, the last question, although I think we asked this question quite a lot, and that is, who in the ham radio community do you admire?
Well, I was actually, you and I talked about this. You told me this question was coming, and I was talking to Greg Allen, W7GA, just yesterday. Oh, in fact, that reminds me. He's just a good friend. I told him it would definitely not be him that I admire.
Yeah, don't mention him at all.
And I wished I'd have to leave the room, and I'm not going to do it. He ordered some things from the SOTA shop, a hat and anyway, he ordered some things, and the shipping how shipping just suddenly went insane about a year ago. And for the shipping, he just ordered me one of everything. And they complained because one of the things he ordered was this.
The name tag.
All this anyway, name tag. And they made him promise that he wouldn't give it to me until I got my mountain goat. So I went to his house yesterday morning to pick this up. So we had a little informal ceremony where he gave me my mountain goat name tag. So I'll get another close up.
He's a good guy.
That's cool.
SOTA mountain goat. He also bought me a hat as well. So there's one. And I secretly suspect, Charlie, that you're wanting to find people to get on and do this interview with you.
Possibly.
I have not talked to him other than my S2S, but you really should talk to K5ISG in New Mexico that does these QSLs. I want to find out more about him. What is he doing? How can he hand draw QSLs for everybody? That's fantastic. Other names, you might have seen a post I made on the SOTA reflector about KX0R.
Yes.
Carrie or George, I'm not quite sure
Carrie.
what prefers to go by. Is it Carrie? I've got so many S2Ss from him, and that post I made on the reflector, I just happened to notice, I don't know why I was on there, but I was on SOTLess or something, and I happened to notice that he had 999,996 CW QSOs.
Wow.
And so I said, oh, that's crazy. I made a post on the reflector, and I said, tomorrow, Carrie is going to hit 100,000 CW QSOs, from SOTA. And anyway, I called him out. He's fantastic.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I mean, he's one I'd love to have on the show, but it's just not his cup of tea. I've reached out to him a couple of times. Maybe he's changed his mind now, but I could try again. But he just is like, I'll just do SOTA. It's all cool.
He's too busy doing activations. He's out there almost every day, it seems like. Yeah. He's also #1 in the world for summit to summit QSOs.
Oh, I believe it. He's
called him out on that. Not that anybody's keeping track.
Yeah.
Seems like I am.
Very good. Well, Bruce, it was a great interview. Very interesting, fascinating, in fact, and appreciate the coming on, and I also really appreciate just getting to know you in person, and your willingness to drive all the way over across the mountain or whatever to get into Cottonwood Heights and visit with me when I'm there. It's I look forward to seeing you and the rest of the gang again here maybe this winter. We'll see.
Yeah. We only get together when you come, so you that we're coming to see. No, thanks for having me on. And when you're in this area, you must have family here or something that brings you here. Let's go to breakfast. I love breakfast.
Yep, sounds good. Dan?
Yeah, thanks for coming on today. It was a great interview, and thoroughly enjoyed it. So I'll have to do a couple of those peaks and look you up when I get up that way again.
All right, guys.
If you need other summits, let me know.
Okay.
Once again, thanks, Bruce, and thanks to all you guys who joined now and who will be listening later. We really appreciate the support. And so with that, we're going to say 73. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.